Live. What's up, everybody? This is the Uncanny Omar, and today it brings me so much joy to get to talk to one of my favorite comic book writers of all time. Top ten, Fabian Nicieza. How's it going, sir?
Doing really good. I'm just trying to do some special effects here.
I see that. I see that.
Low
Those are
rent special effects.
little practical effects that you got going on there. But man, thank you so much for being on the show. I know I've interviewed you several times, and it never gets old talking to you
I
about these.
appreciate that. Try telling that to my wife.
I also don't live with you, so
Yeah,
that
well,
might have something to do with it.
there you
Um, so, Fabian, thank you so much for joining us. First thing I want to say is, man, I think the first time I interviewed you was in a podcast that I had back in 2005. And I
Wow.
remember we had not talked to you right before. I had never talked to you before the podcast, and we were all sitting around table trying to decide what your last name was, how to pronounce it. And I'm like, look, I'm the only Latino here. I'm pretty sure I know but I'm also known for butchering people's names. So I'm like, I'm pretty sure it's Nicieza. And everybody else was like, nah, man, I think it's Ninchas. And somebody else says
Ninchaz.
Nichisia.
Yeah,
Nichisia.
whoever said Ninchaz, they had it right. There you go.
Is that
Yeah, that's a pretty good call on their part. Let's just add extra consonants anywhere we can. Yeah, there we
dude? All I know is I was so happy that I got it right. So it is Fabian Nicieza, right?
It is. It's become my pinned tweet, which actually has helped get people to know how to pronounce it. What I have said for many years now is in Spanish it's Fabian Nicieza, in English it's Fabian Nicieza, and in American it's Fabian Nacunza. So I want to give my fellow Americans their props in being completely incapable of pronouncing foreign sounding names. So,
But they try. That's
well,
what counts.
to tell you the truth, if I changed my last name to Smith, they'd probably mispronounce that too. I'm not.
I'm,
I'm in
I'm
no way, shape, or form at this point of 2020 to give too much credit to the average intelligence of the average citizen of the United States.
Oh man, we're almost out of it. We're almost out of 2020. So here's the 2021 hopefully. But Fabian Nicieza has been writing comics for a few decades,
152 years
a long time. He
since
has written.
1864, and that was my first published comic.
Man, I'm trying to think of what comic you haven't written. At least at Marvel, your name has been just literally across the board about everything.
I think that a couple of years ago I wrote a custom comic for Marvel that had Thor in it. It's the first time I had written Thor, and um, the next year or the same year I wrote a custom comic for Marvel based on the Black Panther, and I think it was the first time I'd written the Black Panther. After I got those two out of the way, I think I've written every single character that was introduced from 61 to 71 uh, in the Marvel Age of Comics, in one shape or form or another. Whether I've written an issue of their book or I've written them in a book, I've gotten to write all of them. And then because I wrote Trinity backup stories at DC for that
Yeah.
1 year run, I ended up writing a tremendous amount of DC characters, even if it was briefly. So I'm at the point where I've written almost all the major DC characters in an issue or not. I tried to create a list one time of every character I've written, and it just became ridiculously difficult to do.
Here's the crazy thing about you, though. Well, one of the crazy things about you that I respect and love is that while you have written all these characters, you can jump into a comic book and immediately capture that character's voice.
I appreciate that.
And that is a very difficult task to do. You know,
Is it
it,
though? It's an interesting question, Omar. I honestly, I don't know that it's difficult or easy. I really don't. I think without how do you compare yourself to someone else and how they approach it? I think that it's not hard to do. I think all it takes is paying attention to the characters' foundations, how they've been handled by the best writers who have handled them, and what has been going on in the book for the previous year or two, you know? And once you combine all three of those things, you should be able to get the voice of the character and the tone of the book. And I have no problem taking over an existing book. Obviously, I've done it plenty of times in my career. But I would, the one thing I've never tried to do is your first issue is unlike anything you've seen before, because oftentimes to me that's really disrespectful of the reader who has been reading it consistently month in and month out, you know. So I may want to go in my own direction, or shift the tone slightly, but it's never going to happen in the first issue. It's going to happen over the course of several issues, you know.
You mentioned something interesting. You said reading, like what the character's been up to. I feel like sometimes writers come into a book and like, yeah, okay, I'll do my own thing. Not
Yeah,
every
they
writer,
do all the time, all the time.
not every
Yeah,
writer, not every instance, but there's a lot of times, especially when you start growing a history with these characters, you yourself as a reader get to know these and then treat these characters as real people, so they mean something special to you, and it's almost disrespectful for a writer to come in and be like, I'm just gonna do my own thing, whatever. Sure. And the character sounds nothing like them. The characters do things that the characters would not normally do. Because in
yeah.
your head, you already have it established what the character is supposed to be like and what they represent. So I think it's amazing that no matter what you're writing, you go into it respecting the readers, and I think that's what's important.
Yeah, and it is respecting the readers. It's not necessarily catering to what they say they want, because often writers say, and it gets the readers mad. The writer's job is not necessarily to give the reader what they want.
Right.
It's sometimes it's to give the reader what they don't want. Because that creates tension and drama and conflict and all of that stuff. But
Absolutely.
it gets harder and harder for any mainstream superhero writer to be expected to keep up with the continuity when you start expanding that. Like when I broke into the industry, I had to keep up with 25 years of continuity. Now you have to keep up with almost 60 years of
But now
continuity.
you have Wikipedia, man. Just go to
Yeah,
Wikipedia.
well, yeah, there's that too. But like when I was offered Juggernaut miniseries a year ago,
Yes.
I knew what I wanted to do with the character, because it was really honestly extensions of what I had done with the character in the past. But I wanted to know what he'd been doing for the last couple of years, because I don't really follow the monthly books. I read digital trades, and often that's a year or 2 years after the books have come out.
Yeah.
So the editor basically told me what had been going on, and the status quo the character had been left at is, oh, by the way, his gem got ripped out of his chest and
Oh, the
crushed, and he
Spider
got he got kicked into limbo. And I'm like, okay, that's my starting point. And they're like, no, you don't have to worry about that. And I was like, how could I not worry about that? I'm not just gonna have him show up in his armor again and not even address the fact that this is the last time we saw him in comics a year ago. So I decided to just use that and turn it into the ongoing subplot in the miniseries. And it ended up playing to the themes I wanted to play to in the miniseries too, which is what people do to accumulate power, and what they're willing to sacrifice in order to attain that power. That's the underlying themes of the miniseries, right? And that played perfectly into my hands. So if I'd ignored continuity, I would have lost out on the chance to have something that was worth exploring. But if you're a slave to continuity, it can also really hamstring you, depending on whatever boneheaded choice was made before So it is a juggle. You do have to balance it. I grew up at a time where continuity was far more important to the mainstream comics and the Marvel universe than it seems to be now. And continuity became a dirty word in the early aughts. And a lot of the generation of writers who've come in now grew up or grew into the industry thinking it was a dirty word. And I really don't think it's a dirty word. I think it just has to be used smartly. You shouldn't have to be a slave to it, nor though should you think that it's something you can ignore. You just have to
Yeah.
try to gauge it on a per story, per character basis and try to use the best that you have available to you.
Um, I think there has to be a happy medium there, right? Accept the continuity that's happened, and then move forward with your own story ideas. I think that's a good way of looking at it. This is one of my favorite comments I've seen so far. We all know x-treme was the real Summers brother, and I have to ask. Okay, so it was announced, I believe, last month that there's a new series coming out from Marvel right after the Ten of Swords storyline or during the reign of X-Men, and it's called X-Men Legends. Your name was
Yes.
attached to the first issue, but your name was not the only thing that I noticed, man. As soon as I saw Adam X, I was just, what? That's awesome, because Adam X is this obscure thing that happened in almost 93, 94,
Yep. Exactly when.
and you were strongly hinted at it, and I know that's the route you were going to go, you and the editors, that Adam X was the third Summers brother, that he was half Shi'ar, half Summers, and then that kind of, when things change, just like everything, um, when there's a change in guard, it seems like they just kind of forgot about that story arc.
Well, this wasn't a change in guard. This was the same guard making the occasional poor choice among many good choices. It's not a third Summers brother. It's a Summers brother.
Right.
Because Sinister said brothers, plural. That's it. And he didn't even necessarily define that as Summers, by the way. The third Summers brother became more of a fan article encapsulation than what the story intentions were. The story intentions were that there could be other genetic material out there that coincides with the DNA genetic line that Alex and Scott, Cyclops and Havoc are a part of. Sinister always had a tremendous interest in that family lineage. The line that Sinister used in X-Men 23 was just an absolute throwaway. I did not have anything in mind necessarily at the moment I wrote it. I wrote it because it sounded like the kind of thing he would say. And Bob Harris, the editor, really liked it. So I had an idea that I wanted to pursue a different approach or a different take on what that would have meant from a lineage standpoint. And introduced Adam, and introduced him poorly, quite frankly. And as a result of the way I introduced him, Bob started to lose interest in the whole idea. So I'm writing to a plan that step by step is losing the editor's interest. And the goal was to have a 4-issue miniseries, and it would have explored the story of Adam. And the editor lost interest and faith in the story, and as a result didn't want to pursue it, but never said no, we're not pursuing it, just never committed to moving forward with the plan. So if you notice my step-by-step introduction of the character, I think he had 4 appearances.
In
X Annual
2,
X-Force Annual 2, X-Force,
X-Men,
X-Men 39, was it, or 40? And
no,
then
you're right, 39.
After the fact, Captain Marvel number 3,
Yep.
which really was the point in which I realized that the miniseries wasn't going to happen like I thought it was gonna, which was supposed to have started in 95 for publication in 95. And when I realized it wasn't going to happen, I said, screw it. I'm going to say the things I want to say about him without hamstringing anyone else, because I'm such a good guy that way. That if you read Captain Marvel number 3, it's pretty much all there. The information is pretty much all there, and I purposefully did not put it in concrete but it's pretty sticky. It's pretty tacky substance that I put it in, that I set it into. I set it in glue, but not concrete. And then that was it. And then he became a running joke after the fact. And he became a running joke after the fact because, like almost all dangling X plots, the longer that you don't address them, the less faith the audience has for it. As a result, they become jokes. They become running jokes. And that's editorial's fault more so than the creative people who are being hired to do it. But when editorial is afraid to commit to a plan of action that is introduced into the books, then they are, in essence, they're actually not fulfilling their obligation to the reader. Because, and I felt this as a reader when I was reading X-Men. I'm sorry, but I love Chris Claremont. I mean, I love Chris, and I've known Chris for 30 years, and but there's plenty of things that he started that he never finished.
Oh,
And
yeah.
that was incredibly annoying as a monthly X-Men reader, which I was before I started working at Marvel Comics and getting the comics for free. I got them for free. It was great. All of them. I got all of them for free. But so
you were writing half of them.
And I was writing half of them, and I still got them for free. Now I write them, and I don't get them. They send you like 2 copies 20 years later. So anyway, I just feel like there's an obligation, and it goes back to, I guess, what we were talking about earlier. There's an obligation between creative to editorial, editorial to their reader, and that obligation often gets scuttled by indecision, by fear of conflict or confrontation. So in this case, it's an editor who didn't want to have a confrontation with a writer about the things they were not liking in the story as it was progressing. So instead of having a confrontation to try to fix or improve what was being done in the stories, you avoid it completely. You ignore it, you turn your back on it, and then guess what? 5 years later, you're a joke. It's a joke, And then
Yeah.
10 years after that, it's an anchor, So the 3 creative teams down the road, they still got that anchor around their ankles. Who's the third Summers brother? Well, quite frankly, we never said there was a third brother to begin with. Now it seems, when X-Men Legends comes out, it seems that there's going to be 77 brothers. Who knows? I mean, So it's almost a case study in how to not do things the right way. That particular character's story. I knew what his story was from the beginning. I knew what it was when I introduced him. It was a good story. I think it will be a good story being told in 2 issues in a few months rather than in the 4 that I wanted to originally tell it. But it's partially my own fault as much as anyone else that good story didn't get a chance to play out, because I chose to introduce him in an over-the-top bombastic way to appeal to the audience that I thought was buying the title that he was appearing in, which was X-Force. And there are many reasons why I did that, and many of them could be considered valid when you talk them out, but not valid, or it's invalid when you actually read the words on the page and you see the art on the page and everything else. So it's my own fault, because the character you see in X-Men 39 and the character you see in Captain Marvel 3, it gets closer and closer to the character I wanted him to be. But I chose to introduce him bombastically, thinking that I needed to pop that, big 90s overly extreme. And I look, I called them extreme as much as anything to secure the trademark for Marvel. And as a result, of the character's perceptions are that he's extreme, but I only did it because I wanted to keep that trademark for Marvel, because Rob had Extreme Studios that he was doing and all that other bullshit that was going on with Image.
Yeah.
Wanting to do their own thing, having tremendous courage to do their own thing, but some of them wanting to try to hold on as much as they possibly could to the X stuff that they had to be, that they had to got them to that point, So I didn't want someone else to take the trademark Extreme, so that's why I named them Extreme. But you notice in the comics themselves, I think I only ever really called them Adam X. I mean, the caption may have said Adam X the
The
Extreme, but he
Extreme.
didn't call
Yeah.
himself Adam, and you'll see why he calls himself Adam in the X-Men Legends book coming up. It's 2 issues. The first issue is an oversized first issue, so it's 30 pages. The second issue is a regular 20-page issue. So I got 50 pages out of the original story plan, which was an 88-page 4-issue limited series. Because back then the comics were 22 pages a month. Now they're 20 pages a month. So it's really the exact story I always wanted to tell. I just had to truncate some stuff for space. I had to tighten several scenes and several subplot stuff that was going on in it. I had to trim down and cut.
I have to. Okay, so 2 things. Number 1, you were absolutely right about those dangling plot holes, because the same thing happened to Chris Claremont, right? He wanted to tell the story of Sarah when she went missing, and it wasn't until way after he left the book that you guys got to do it through Phalanx Covenant. The second thing is, how in the hell did it feel to either get a phone call or email years later saying, "Hey, you remember that Adam X guy?
Oh, well,
How did that happen, man?"
it didn't quite work that way, although it still was incredibly surreal, and quick. It's been really fast. This all happened very quickly.
Okay.
I got an email from Mark Basso, who's editor in the X Family. They had been liking what I'd done in Juggernaut, and take into account I started Juggernaut in September of 2019. My final script, my 5th script, was delivered January of 2020. So before all of this happened, before the delays, I was done with Juggernaut. I wrote all 5 issues, and that was it. Ron had was drawing it, etc. So it was all rear view mirror to me. But apparently the editors were enjoying it, and I know Jordan, like the X group editor, was enjoying it. So they started to talk about books they wanted to do, and one of them is X-Men Old People Get to Create Stories Again. Was that
what the original title was called?
Longer title. Yeah, they condensed it to just Legends.
And 40-year-old for 40-year-old
for 40-year-old man boys. Yeah, the official title of the book is X-Men Old Creators Get to Tell New Stories for 40-year-old man boys. But it's
tears rolling down my face.
Yeah, the letterer looked at that and said, "I can't come up with a logo for that. It's too much." And they just said, "Let's just call it X-Men Legends." Mark sent me an email and he said, "We're starting a new book. It's called X-Men Legends." He almost lost me the second he said that. I was like, God, I don't want to do this. I have no interest. It's yesterday's news for me. And he said, "We're telling stories set in the continuity for when you wrote the book. If there's any stories you'd like to tell that you didn't get to tell, we'd like you to do 3 issues in the first year of the book, a 2-parter, and a 1-issue self-contained story. And if you have any ideas, please bounce them off me. We'd love to have you in this book, obviously." I said, "Okay, fine." And I thought about it, and I actually grabbed an omnibus I have. I think this Wedding of Cyclops and Phoenix omnibus, and because all my comics are in the basement, I don't pay that much attention to them anymore. So I started flipping through the omnibus, and I'm looking through multiple issues that I did.
The Wedding of Cyclops and Phoenix?
Yeah, I think it's the Wedding of Cyclops and Phoenix omnibus.
Really quick, every time I see you at a con, I always remind you of this, that I used some of your wedding vows in my personal wedding vows.
I'm sorry to hear that. I'm sorry to hear that.
Beautifully written, and it worked on my wife. I don't know if she's still in the chat or not, but she knows.
You are like the good definition of the 40-year-old man boy. Unfortunately, we know what the bad definition of that is out there. But right now, you're the good definition.
I don't know if that's good or not, but
I'm sorry. It is good. It is good to be the good definition of a 40-year-old man boy. I'm a 59, almost soon to be a 59-year-old man boy who feels the same way when I read an Engelhardt or Jim Shooter Avengers issue. Okay, so it's the same. It's about who we were and what we were reading between the ages of like 12 and 18. So that's always the foundational core of our comic book love,
Yeah.
So
So you got
So
the omnibus.
I'm
Which, by the
flipping
way,
through the
I'm glad that
omnibus.
you got an omnibus.
Yeah, Omar, you're gonna like this story. I'm flipping through the omnibus and I'm going, yeah, it's just not that many stories I feel like telling. It just doesn't interest me that much anymore. Besides not knowing where half of the characters are, not knowing if stories were told of them in between. Like I have a Threnody thing, and I wanted to do a whole bunch of stuff with Threnody. She appeared in just a couple issues. Then I found out from someone, oh yeah, she appeared in. She was a supporting character in X-Man. And I'm like, I never read X-Man. I was gone from the books by then. I'm not gonna reread. I'm not gonna read 2 years worth of X-Man issues to find out what they did with Threnody so that I could tell a one-issue story with her. Forget it. So I started to just type out notes, and I had one two-parter I wanted to do, and that was Adam X. That was it. And
Oh,
I
okay.
had three one-parters, three different one single issue pitches. And then I cut one out because it would have required too much reading to see what's gone on since. And it's complicated because the book is set. Your stories in this book in X-Men Legends are set during the time period at which you were originally creating the stories, right? So my continuity in X-Men Legends, both my two-part Adam X story and my one-issue story that I haven't scripted yet, so I don't want to reveal what it is yet, are all set during the time
Threnody. You
period.
read all 60 issues of X-Men. You're gonna do a Threnody
No, I
story.
didn't. No, I'm not. No, I'm not. I actually always had a pocket story I wanted to do that was part and parcel of an X-Men issue I wrote, and the pocket story worked out really
Oh
well.
man, now you got me.
It
My
actually
cogs are
explores
turning.
interesting themes that have become more relevant now with the result of everything they're doing now.
Okay,
Um,
so go
so
ahead.
so I pitched Adam X as a two-part story, the story I wanted to tell, same way I wanted to tell it, and I pitched a couple of one-parters. And Mark got back to me and said yes. I said, "What do you mean yes?" He goes, "Yes, we'll do the Adam X story, and then I want to do this one part story." And I said, "Okay, wait, you're going to do the Adam X story?" He says, "Yes." I said, "You understand what that is?" And he said, "Yes, we do. We're fine with it." I go, "You understand?" I did everything I could to try to get them to say no.
Really?
Yeah, because I didn't want to do it because it's a no-win situation to do it. It'll never be what you wanted it to be. It'll never be of its time because it's not of its time. It's 30 years later, you know.
Yeah, I can understand that.
So they kept saying yes, and I kept waiting for anything to make me back out. I was willing. I was ready to back out while I scripted it. I was willing to back out after I delivered the script. I'm still willing to back out tomorrow if Brett hands in a page that isn't beautiful. Every page Brett is doing is phenomenal, so it's pissing me off. If he hands in one page that I disagree with, I'm quitting. That's it. I'm returning Marvel's money. They also paid me already for it, which was smart on their part. If they hadn't have paid me for it, then technically I can tell them they're not allowed to publish it. So I did both scripts at the same time. I mean, issue parts 1 and 2. I handed the story in. Then they came back to me and said, "We think we want to launch the book with this. Can we add
Right.
10 pages to it?" And I was like, "Ah, crap." Quite frankly, I could use 10 pages in part 2 more than I can use 10 pages in part 1. But Mark was great. Mark Besso did a really good job of pointing out opportunities to be able to expand a little bit on what I had going on in a scene, or opportunities to blow out the art a little more, because as you can imagine, it was kind of tight. I wanted Brett Booth to draw it from the very beginning. I was writing it with Brett's art in mind without even knowing who would be drawing the story. Um,
Really?
yeah,
So
yeah. I was writing it with Brett's style in mind. So I asked, "Can we ask Brett and they said, this is fantastic coincidence because we'd just been talking internally about trying to get Brett to do more work with us. And I knew Brett was interested in doing more X stuff. Because we don't know each other, we never met, but on through social media, we would just
He
go
was
back and
always
forth
posting
occasionally.
pictures of like his
That-
lineup of X-Men and
yeah,
stuff.
yeah, and he posted
he
a pinup.
strongly hinted at.
Yeah, he posted a commission he had done of Cyclops and Havoc, and that was one of the
That's it.
foundations
Yeah.
for me in how I was thinking about this. And I think his art is incredibly dynamic, ridiculously crowded, and and absurdly fun. And I wanted all of those things for this. So by having a 30-page first issue, we got to open up a few things so that he had more room to draw. Issue 2 is really tight, but I still have a couple spots where I open it up for him to have room to draw some big things. And the story is exactly what I wanted it to be in 1994. Its beginning, middle, and end is exactly what I wanted it to be. Where I leave the character at the end of this 2-part story is exactly where I wanted to leave him in 1994. It leaves opportunity, and this was my plan back then. It leaves opportunity for him to be completely ignored in continuity, or it leaves opportunity for him to be picked up and used by a future writer in many different ways. So I don't care what that is. Somebody just told me that he's appearing in one of the current books right now. X Factor or something like that. I said, really? He is? That seems odd. And it was in motion before they even asked me to do this, so it's not a matter of someone grabbing him while something else is happening. It just is what it is. But it's also exactly why working in these X books is such a pain in the ass. But because my story takes place in the past, it is what it is, set in the time that it happened.
So are they marketing this as it happened then?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, as far
That's the one thing I want to make clear.
I'll say that with the caveat that there's always a difference between how editorial presents something to you and what that might evolve into. So they may have presented something to me fully intending that that's what it was going to be. Stories told by the original creators set in the time period that those creators were working on the titles. That's how it was presented to me. That doesn't mean that in 6 months it hasn't evolved or changed. That doesn't mean that marketing and promotion and sales will follow up on that premise. You know what I mean?
Right.
There are some things that just happen out of your control when you're dealing with the major publishers, and how something is presented and how it is perceived are often things that are out of your control, right? So this is how they presented it to me. This is how I wrote my 2 issues. You can tell by Brett's art that Havoc is wearing his X Factor 90s costume.
Yeah.
You can tell by his art that Cyclops is wearing Jim Lee's X-Men time costume. The story is set about 4 months after the events of Captain Marvel #3. So in that Captain Marvel #3 story, Captain Marvel and Adam confronted Eric the Red and a group of Shi'ar religious zealots called the Crystal Claws, who had a secret base somewhere in the Antarctic, and Adam's truth is revealed to him, and he destroys the base, and he thinks he's killed Eric and the Crystal Claws. And now he's going to wander Earth with his truth revealed to him, and not necessarily give a damn one way or the other, because the revelation of that truth doesn't make that much of a difference to him when he's living on Earth and doesn't have a spaceship to go anywhere with, so
Right.
So 4 months later, he's just basically traveling, walking around, doing odd jobs, and earning his keep wherever he can, with absolutely no idea of what he's supposed to do or how he's supposed to be what he's been told he's supposed to be, and that's where we pick up with him. So it's forces out of his control that are sucking him into a life that he doesn't want to have. And I always likened him way back in the old days. I likened it in some ways. It's a bit of a Luke Skywalker story. It's the abandoned farm kid who is intended to be the leader of the blah blah blah, the ruler of the blah blah blah. And I don't want to say too much, because even though it's all in pre-existing continuity, because it's been 30 years, I want it also to feel fresh for readers as they read the story, because it's all presented pretty cleanly in the story, and his conflict is presented pretty simply and cleanly in the story. What if someone tells you you're supposed to be something that you don't think you want to be?
I like that concept. I'm excited for it. I know there's lots of us that are excited for things like this that are coming out, and getting to the original writers to wrap up these storylines. I don't know. It gives me a lot of hope for respecting the past and moving with the future. That's really cool, and I think that's where I want to be reading comics.
What I don't want is for the audiences of you, like you, to think that the book should be or will be wrapping stuff up or telling, or cleaning out a contradictory or dangling plot line. That's not. I wouldn't imagine that's necessarily what all the stories are going to be. I can't imagine that that's what all the stories are going to be. I'm doing my first two-parter is that, but my one-issue story is not that. My one-issue story is a side look at something that was going on while a story you were reading was happening. And it's an interesting side look because it fleshes out a lot about different characters in a different way. And I can't imagine that Louise or Larry or Peter David or even Chris, for that matter, are necessarily going to be exclusively focused on resolving dangling plot lines. That's not what they're going to do. In many cases, they're going to tell stories that they wanted to tell back then and for one reason or another didn't. And what they may also want to do is tell a new story that they just came up with 5 minutes ago that is set in that time period. And that's all fair game too, and that should be fair.
I'm good with that as well. Who can you tell us who the artist is in your second story?
No, because I haven't even written it yet. So
you haven't written it yet.
It's not scheduled. They told me they wanted to have 3 issues. They wanted me to do 3 issues out of the first 12, and I just got to write the second one. I just haven't been able to. I haven't had the time. I was supposed to start it last week, and I didn't. But I will. I wanted to have it done before the end of the year. I got to tell the editor.
You got time, man.
No, I don't actually. After this call, I have to email Mark and tell him, I told you I was going to have it. Maybe this week it's not going to happen.
You can blame me. You're like, man, this jerk came up to me and wanted to interview me.
All these podcasts, they're just taking up all my time. No, I will get into it later, but I am a novelist now, so I have novel work to do. So that takes quite a lot of time and effort.
I bet that's a lot different than writing comics. I mean, I'm not saying it's easier or harder. It's different though.
It's very different in many ways.
You are the artist and the writer.
Harder and more time consuming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is New Warriors for life. Okay, so I have to ask you this because you know me.
If you're going to live life, you might as well live it for New Warriors.
That's right, dude. I think I'm one of the few people that I remember talking to you at cons and stuff that you were like, you just said, I'm glad somebody wants to talk about New Warriors. I get not that you got tired of talking about Deadpool, but it seems like the popularity of Deadpool in the last decade has just blown up. And a lot of people come up to you, to get their signatures because you co-created the character. So,
it's more about being asked the same question again and again. That's all really. I love that there's Deadpool fans. I love that the character became what he's become. I also know that the character means a lot to a lot of people who have a variety of issues in their lives, and Deadpool helps them with that. I get all of that. It really boils down to you can only be asked so many times the same question before you really just get a little tired of answering it, you know?
Yeah.
But you have to treat each person there with equal respect because they've all waited online for an hour or whatever it is, and you don't want to disrespect their question. So to them, even though you've heard the question 45 times already that same day, to them it's the first time they're asking it. So
In an alternate reality, it would have been Adam X. Dude, can you sign my 9.8 Adam X first
yeah,
appearance, please?
that would have been funny.
Different reality, man. Different reality. This is an awesome comment. Fabian, I sure hope you know how much Omar always talks you up on his show. I guarantee you're making his day right now. I think he knows. He knows.
Yeah.
I had a smile on my face, grinning over here.
Omar gets 10% of my royalties.
I'm good with that. I will push that novel. I don't even review novels on my channel, but I'll push it. So, like to me, because a lot of people, when they see Fabian Nicieza, of course, they think X-Men 25. My buddy Gabe's, I don't know if he's still in the chat, but I saw a couple people in the chat talking about X-Men 25, one of the greatest comics ever written. The wedding issue of Cyclops and Phoenix, Deadpool. I mean, you get a lot of love for that. But to me, I think the greatest work you've done so far, because you're not done, you're a long time for being done, is New Warriors. And I think New Warriors is one of those books that just gets lost in the 90s. Like, a lot, not just comic fans, but a lot of people had this mentality of, oh, 90s comics were so bad, right? And people that have never read 90s comics, there's a lot of freaking gold in 90s comics. And I think New Warriors just gets put into that category of like, oh, it's a 90s comic. And to me, it was so much more than that. To this day, I push for that book.
I appreciate it, Omar. And I got to be honest with you. I think that New Warriors is now pretty much exactly what it was then. Anyone who was involved and engaged with the book loved it, appreciated it, understood it, and it was theirs. Meaning it wasn't what everyone else was reading. But it was being read by enough people. Don't forget, the first 2 years it was a top 25 book for Marvel.
Oh, I know.
It increased its sales consistently from its first issue to its 12th issue. It almost doubled its sales from its first issue to its 12th issue. That's not a hidden gem. You know what I mean? That's not something no one read.
Oh no, people were buying and reading
it.
Yeah,
it was selling 250,000 copies at its height between like issue 18 and 30. And then everything started to go down. So New Warriors went down absolutely along with everything else. But the audience who was a part of that book back then, they're still an audience that touts it, and they're still an audience that loves it and understands it and respects it. And they're my guy. It's my people. We're all in it together. To me, New Warriors was always separate from my X-Men stuff because that was commercial tripe, for lack of a more respectful term. It was commercial tripe. New Warriors was the book that I wanted to be to its fans what like New Teen Titans was for me. You know what I mean? And
that's the way I describe that book. That's the way I spell that.
Claremont and Cockrum and Claremont Burns X-Men was to me, and what Jim Shooter and George Perez's Avengers was to me. I wanted it to be the book that 10 to 16-year-olds knew was theirs. And yes, there's a 25 or a 30-year-old X-Men reader who's been reading it since 1975 and has proprietary interest in that book. And yes, there's a 12-year-old kid reading X-Force right now who loves gigantic muscles and pin-up posed pages, right? And that's fine too. But New Warriors was for a group of readers who how do I say this nicely without diminishing my other readers on my other titles?
No, go ahead. We won't say anything.
For a group of readers who had a clue, you know,
I'm gonna get that on a T-shirt. Fabian Nicieza says I have a clue.
they
Or had a
understood,
clue.
they understood character, they understood subplot development, they understood nuance, they understood conflict, they understood gray areas, that they liked that. So these characters gave that to them. I hope pretty much all 53 issues I wrote, you know.
Yeah.
Um, and I left the book because I felt that I was still putting more energy into that book than Marvel was. And when you're a work for hire writer who's been doing it for a certain amount of time, and by that point I've been doing it for almost 10 years, I decided that it's a mistake to be putting more energy into a comic book than the company that owns the characters and the property is putting into it. So that's why I backed off and stepped away. It wasn't because I didn't like the characters anymore. It wasn't because I didn't have ideas for the book, since I knew I wanted it to be all the way through issue 100. It really was
Oh,
that I could
maybe
no
they'll
longer.
do a
Yeah,
new Warriors Legend. They'll do a new Warriors
I don't
Legend.
play that game. Yeah, I don't. That's yeah. New Warriors Legends would be
Yes.
issues
They'll be
54 through 100.
the way Fabian intended. The director's cut, that's popular these days. We'll
Yeah.
release it immediately in omnibus format. We don't have to do the single issues. Man, different. That would have been a different life, man. You added 100 issues planned, huh?
Oh yeah, yeah,
Or in your,
yeah. You got to understand that was the old me, and the old me was really ridiculously anal in terms of planning his 25 issue benchmarks. So the way I used to structure back then is 12 issue thematic arcs leading to
yeah.
25th issue anniversary explosions. Something happens every 12 issues that the characters learn and grow from, which propels them and fuels them for the next 12 issues. But then 25, 50, 75, 100 mark, something so big is happening that it shakes up the status quo of the book. Doesn't necessarily alter the DNA or the themes of the book, but it shakes up the status quo of the book. So you look, issue 25 shook up the status quo of the book. Issue 50 shook up the status quo of the book, because
Yeah.
I had originally intended there to be spin off to a second monthly book.
Yeah, you had
At that
at the time it was Nova, Night Thrasher. You had a Little Justice miniseries, and I don't mean
yeah.
little like demeaning that. It was a solid series, but it was a miniseries. And then you had New Warriors. Oh man, yes, release the Nicieza cut.
So 75 was going to be another major thing, and 100 was going to be, yeah, it was going to be a major thing, because that was when we were going to reveal why Mad Thinker, originally in issue number 3, had wanted them to go on a certain track that he wanted them to go on. That issue 100 was going to be
You
Mad
were
Thinker.
playing. Damn, you were playing the long game.
Yeah.
That is so awesome.
Yeah, and I haven't done it since, to that extent, because I learned it's stupid to do that. I did it a little bit with Thunderbolts, but not nearly.
I was gonna say when you came back
Not
to
nearly as tight. Yeah, yeah, I did it with Thunderbolts, but I got myself in trouble with that book because I over complicated my storylines and my plots, so I screwed that one up.
more
And
so than the Fight Club Thunderbolts that replaced your book. Are you serious?
Yeah, I didn't even pay attention to Fight Club, and then I got rehired and rewrote it. Wrote it
Nobody
again
else
afterwards.
did either.
Yeah,
Nobody
so
else
to
did
me,
either.
Fight Club never even happened, because I was back on the book doing the miniseries. Yes, you overcomplicate your book a little bit when you need to go to a bi-weekly storyline just to tell the stories of 2 different entire teams that you have set up. So yeah, I got a little complicated, a little overly complicated. Absolutely, a negative to my work when looked at historically. I do tend to complicate things for my own good. And the other book that I had planned long term was Red Robin. I know someone asked the question on the thread.
Yeah,
about that.
this is a really good question. I'd be curious to know where Fabian would have taken Red Robin before the New 52 ruined everything.
I had Red Robin planned out roughly to past issue 75. And the reason I did that, and already now we're talking about what, 2010, 2011, whatever. I I
10 year, yeah,
purposefully I
2011.
purposefully chose to structure and plan Red Robin in a way that was counterintuitive to how I move more. But the reason it is because the character would have thought that way. So when I was asked to come back to Red Robin, as opposed to writing Tim in the Robin, which I knew I was the book Red Robin was going to be launched. I knew I was writing Robin. So my job when I was given the Robin assignment was
Mhm.
to basically close a lot of loopholes and justify why he's going to take the Red Robin persona. When I inherited Red Robin from Chris Yost, when Mike Martz asked me if I wanted to come back, that was a whole different game. That was me then saying, this is about the Tim Drake book, and Tim Drake at age 18, not Tim Drake at age 14. You know what I mean? So
Yes.
the way I approach it, if Tim being who he is would be playing a chess game and planning multiple moves and anticipating what move is going to be 10 to 15 moves down the road. Tim is the super chess guy, and he plays once and he just goes from board to board and he makes his moves. But in his mind, he knows what every board has on it. He knows what the next move the other player is going to make, and he knows what his moves are going to be 5 moves down the road. That's what a chess player does anyway. Think about a guy who's playing those rapid chess games against multiple opponents at the same time. That's Tim.
Tim.
So
Tim
I
was.
can't write something in issue.
Oh, you were
Am I
Fabian.
back? We were just cycling for a second. Can you hear
Yeah,
me?
yeah, I can hear you. You were cutting
Okay.
out a little bit,
Where
and
did I
yeah,
cut out?
when you were saying about Tim. Oh, and now you guys have me. So we will wait for Mr. Nicieza to come back. If you all have any questions, please leave them in the chat. So apparently he had Red Robin written all the way up to issue 7. There he is.
We're back. I don't know if it's a Wi-Fi on my end or not. It says it says I'm looking for networks. Maybe it's a Wi. Maybe I'm having issues with the Wi-Fi here at my house.
I'll just
You can hear
fly
me, right?
fly me up there. Tell me New Warrior stories, and I'll fix it
You're gonna
for you.
reboot. I gotta go down to the basement and reboot my router. I know what your advice is gonna be already. Thank you. Omar, the IT guy, by the way, when we were having troubles before the show even started getting my video to load, tells me reboot your computer. Okay, thank you. There we go.
6 years, 6 years of
6 years.
school for that. Okay.
There you go. So anyway, I had to think the way Tim thinks, and Tim thinks long term. So the moves he's making now, he has to anticipate what that's going to mean down the road. So even something he's doing in issue 14 may not have ramifications until issue 30. You know what I mean? So
Yes.
that's why I was thinking of Tim's book that way. And it's much more challenging as a writer to write that way. It really is. Sometimes it can be constricting to write that way, but I thought for the sake of that character, to respect that character, I had to think like that. And Tim is smarter than me. I like writing characters that are smarter than me because it makes me, it's a challenge. It makes me think harder.
I
You
was gonna
know,
say that's a challenge, and Tim has always been written like, well, supposed to have been written like that, right? He's the guy that figured out Batman is Bruce Wayne, Dick Grayson was
yep,
Robin, eventually became Nightwing, and then Jason Todd died at the hands of Joe. Like this guy figured it all out. He was a kid and figured it all out.
yeah.
And people, dude, since I do a lot of collected editions on this channel, that's one thing people want to see. When are they going to reprint the Red Robin trade? Because they're gone and they go for a ridiculous amount of money online.
Yeah, I don't know why they stopped. Yeah, I wish that they had. collected more of that. I don't know DC's publishing philosophy or thinking. I really don't.
You don't
I
want to go there.
I don't want to go there.
You don't want
I
to go
don't. I don't know how different it's going to be now that Marie Javins is the editor in chief.
I hope
But
they go
an
to
editor in chief only has so much say over publishing choices, especially collected editions.
Yeah.
I don't know what their thinking is. Red Robin was always a very solid seller. It was never a top seller, but it was never a bottom feeder. They canceled it with New 52 and didn't relaunch a Red Robin title. It wasn't because of sales. It was because the editorial heads of DC at that time, quite frankly, always despised the sidekick characters. They always
Oh yeah.
despised the notion of legacy characters because they felt teenagers are annoying. They were Marvel guys in their mentality, and I'm not speaking ill of either of them. This is just their preferences, and they have every right to their preferences, especially if they get elevated to positions of authority. They have the right to have their opinions.
For the longest time, they were trying to get rid of Nightwing and
yeah, I mean, Dan DiDio and Bob Harris don't like legacy characters. They don't like teenage sidekicks. Bob didn't like them when he worked at Marvel. He didn't like them, So it's not speaking ill of them that they think this way, but now is the speaking ill of them part. DC's audience has a huge percentage of it that loves and respects these legacy characters. Absolutely. So why would you, as a publisher, choose to disrespect something on such a consistent basis that a large segment of your audience loves? It's antithetical to me. It makes no sense. You can put these characters through the ringer. That's part and parcel of a monthly comic book work. But you can't do it out of disrespect. You have to do it out of respect and love for what these things are. So it's always been the case. And I don't know how or if that's going to change. The legacy characters have become problematic because they're all mid to late adults now, and they can't be like kids anymore, but they can't assume the mantle that they should have assumed. You know what I mean? So
some of the best
do
Batman
become
stories
problematic.
Some of the best Batman stories were those Dick Grayson years, right after R.I.P.
Oh yeah, well, I think Dick Grayson makes a better Batman than Batman does. So
shots fired. But
actually, I think Dick Grayson makes a better everything than anyone else does. So.
Yes.
You're talking about my favorite character. So
really?
For me, yeah. Oh yeah. Always.
You're melting my heart, man. But like it's always been Nightwing at DC. I love the character of Dick Grayson. He's the man. So now, man, you're just looking at your portfolio of everything you've written. What's the most fun you've had writing comics? Not the most money you made or the most fan following, but what's the most fun that you remember? And what was the comic? I remember you writing. Was it Troublemakers during Acclaim years? That was to me that was fun.
Yeah, it wasn't fun because I was running the company at the time, so it was an incredibly stressful time.
Okay.
I enjoyed writing Troublemakers, and I really enjoyed writing Turok, but I couldn't define it as fun because it was just way too much work and too much responsibility on my shoulders. Probably the most fun that I've had writing comics, in light of the fact of everything else going on around me, whether it's my full-time job at the time at Marvel or any other titles I'm writing or anything like that, is probably New Warriors 1 through 25. Because it was so exciting for me at that time in my life, at the age I was, because I was just turning 30, to be getting to do everything I really wanted to do since I was 12 years old, and to know, and I mean this honestly, just to know in your gut that it's good. Like I can't say that about all my writing at all. I'm usually a pretty harsh critic of my own work, but with New Warriors 1 through 25, we knew it was good. We knew that it was better than anyone else thought it was going to be. We knew that people in the office were starting to see the pages filtering their way through production in the bullpen and talking positively about it. I knew my bosses Not even Danny, my editor. I knew we were on fire. We were a really good team because we didn't agree all the time at all. So we fought constantly, and that was always for the betterment of the book. So the dynamic between Danny, me, and Mark was great, and yet that becomes an insular dynamic because it's taking place in its own little bubble, the monthly creation of this comic. The question is, how is that bubble being perceived in other departments within the company? That's even before the question is, how is that perceived by the retailers and the readers outside of the company? So you see all the little stages it has to go through. And we had the first year, I don't forget, before issue 1 even came out, we already had 6 issues completed in the drawer because Mark drew fast and I wrote fast, and we were excited as hell. Right?
That's a hell of a comic book team.
It was, yeah, we were. Especially,
yeah,
when Larry Malstead started inking with issue 3, we really became a hell of a team. And internally, people were starting to look at it and go, "Hey, this looks pretty good." Oh, New Warriors, that's gonna suck. No, it looks pretty good.
It's gonna suck.
And Mark and Grunwald and Tom DeFalco seeing it and knowing that their faith in the reason why they wanted the book to happen, and the reason why they wanted me to write it but didn't force me on Danny. Danny had to eventually accept that it was inevitable that I was going to write this book. It took him a long time to accept it, but he inevitably did. Mark and Tom wanted me to write the book, but were not going to force Danny to hire me. So all of it just was working. It was just working. It was right. And the sales department, who didn't understand the book at first, didn't have faith in it, they started to see more of it, but still didn't trust it or believe it because they're not higher issues. They're just seeing sporadically covers coming in, the occasional page. They're not reading entire issues. But I was Marvel's advertising manager at the time, so I'm doing 2 different things. I got to promote and sell Marvel's books, and at the same time, I'm writing one of them, in this case, New Warriors. And I have to make sure that the advertising manager part of me is responsible to New Warriors as just one of all the titles that we're doing, not the title I have such a vested interest in having do well, much less convincing people that it's not going to suck the way they thought it was going to suck. That was my internal line for months was, "It ain't going to suck like you thought it was gonna." That was my internal copy line, but I'd be going to retailer meetings and marketing meetings with Carol Kalish, who at that time was the vice president of direct sales, and we'd be doing a presentation, and she described New Warriors to a group of 25 or 40 retailers as it's like Police Academy for the Avengers. It's like Avengers Academy. And the retailers' faces were like, "Oh, that's gonna suck." And I'm standing, and I can't contradict her overtly because she's the vice president and the head of sales, and you don't want to stop someone when they're in a flow giving a presentation. I'm running the slides at the time. My job was to put the slides together and to give her a script. She would go off script and do her own thing. But at the cocktail hour after the slideshow presentation, I'm literally going from pocket retailer to pocket group of retail going, "Like that at all." New Warriors, me, please don't think of it that way. And the retailer's like, yeah. So the book was the lowest selling title of that 6-issue marketing launch, which was Heroes for the 90s. 6 titles,
I remember that.
one a month came out. Issue 1 of New Warriors was the lowest selling title of those 6 titles. It sold 126,000 copies in the direct market. Okay. By issue 12, it was selling about 220,000 copies, 210,000 copies in the direct market, not even counting newsstand. So in 1 year, it went up in sales consistently and steadily, issue by issue by issue. That to me is just fantastic validation of what we were doing, and that's why it's, to this day, as much as I've enjoyed other assignments, that it meant the most to me, and it was the most exciting to me.
People are saying can't wait for the New Warriors Omnibus to come out. I'll be doing an advanced overview of the new printing pretty soon on the channel, and I will be pushing the hell out of that book because I love it, and that's the thing with me though. Like, I, if I find something good on my channel, I want to push for it, and I want others to enjoy it. And it's not always going to be 100%. People like different things, and people be like, "Ah, this is outdated. This guy's got a skateboard. What the hell is this?" But there's so much more to that book. This is a wonderful question from Steven. Fabian, Nomad seemed to be the book where you really pushed the envelope. There were a few issues of that. That's another underrated series. Anything you wanted to do in that series that editorial refused?
Yeah, plenty. I can't answer it any other way. Yeah, there was plenty of things I wanted to do that they refused to do. The most frustrating thing for me for that book, and it's the reason I actually quit the book. And I quit the book, and then I was told that 25 was going to be the last issue. Could I at least stay through 25 by the editor, who was my friend? And I said, okay, fine, I'll stay to 25. But I would have quit the book before it got canceled had they not told me that the cancellation was pending. I wanted Nomad to be HIV positive after the issues to the hidden in view storyline that I did, like issues 12, 13, 14, something like that. And the frustrating thing about that is I had the support of my editor-in-chief, my publisher, and my president of the company, and we still weren't allowed to do it because it went outside of the company to McAndrews and Forbes, which owned us at that time. Scumbag billionaire Ron Perlman owned us, and scumbag billionaire's right-hand man, scumbag 2, Bill Bevins, put the kibosh on that because they were afraid that it would adversely affect the stock price. So out of respect to me, and it was actually very respectful towards me, and how the company viewed me and the friendships I had with the editor-in-chief and the publisher, Mike Hobson, and the president, Terry Stewart, that they granted me an audience with Bill Bevins to try to make my pitch to him as to why this is a smart thing for Marvel to be doing. And we had a meeting upstairs in Terry's office, and I pitched to Bill Bevins, and it was like talking to a brick wall. He was clueless and was not going to change his mind. Having a superhero character be HIV positive was going to ruin Marvel's stock, and it was going to destroy Marvel's sales. That was how he viewed it. It was also ridiculous, rampant homophobia, because back then HIV, in the minds of stupid people, meant only gay people got HIV. And I wanted to tell a story that showed that you could get it other ways, because I knew people who had gotten it other ways and died from it. So that was the one that was the big one, because I walked out of that office and I looked at Mark, I looked at Tom DeFalco, and I looked at Mike Hobson. I just said, you guys just lost me. I said, it's not today, and it may not be for 6 more months, but you just lost me. And they understood, and I was gone from the company. About 7, 8 months later, I was no longer on staff with the company anymore after that meeting.
Damn.
Yeah,
like, that's
fun times, fun stories.
Well, honestly, that's a damn lot of things that happen behind the scenes that I wasn't aware of. Because I was a kid.
Of course you're not. No, you're not supposed. Yeah,
right. But yeah. All I saw was like one of my favorite writers writing some of my favorite stories, so much shit that needs to be resolved. And then out of nowhere, right, like in the middle of Age of Apocalypse, right after Age of Apocalypse, he's gone. And I'm wondering, because we never see that as fans, as kids, I was in high school when that stuff was coming out. I was like, wait a minute, did Fabian quit? Is he going to DC?
That's quit.
That's the kind of crap, man.
In about an, I think it was a 1-year span. I think I quit Cable, I quit Night Thrasher, I quit Nova, I quit New Warriors, I got fired from X-Force, I quit Nomad and it got canceled, and I quit X-Men as my last thing. So that all happened within a 1-year span. And there's a lot of reasons for it, and it's not all anyone's fault, and it's not all Marvel's fault, and some of it is just me hitting a wall, because you got to understand, I was writing
Yeah.
6 monthly books and I had a full-time job.
I was
which was
buying. Wait, you had a full-time job and
yeah,
writing?
I was the entire time I was at Marvel, I was advertising manager or then editor, and then
Yeah.
by 94 I I ended up just becoming, in essence, a consultant, but I was going into the office 2 to 3 days a week, and my job was to interdepartmental ombudsman, to make sure all the different departments are communicating with each other about different things, and attend meetings, attend multiple high-level meetings, to be able to make sure that departments are coordinating better. I couldn't be a monthly editor anymore, because it was just too much work. But I was doing all of that the entire time I was writing. So I was
6
writing.
books. Did you have a wife, kids at the time?
No kids, but I had a wife. My For a couple of years there, my mother-in-law was fighting cancer, so my wife was spending a lot of time with her. I was writing every night. I was writing all weekend long, and I was working full time. I was writing on the train into the city, because it was a 90-minute commute each way. So this is pre-laptop. That's why the first dialogue Deadpool ever utters is still in a spiral-bound notebook that I have in my office.
Are you
in an
serious?
envelope.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
because
awesome,
I was
man.
doing, and it's like 7 pages of New Mutant script, and like right before it or right after it is a bunch of Alpha Flight 96 script, and New Warriors script, because I was doing it all on loose leaf paper and then typing it up onto my computer when I got home. And this was all pre-laptop, so it made things a lot harder. And
Back
I
in
was
my
that was
day,
it.
you can
So
literally say, "Back in my day, we used to
so
have a
this was
spiral notebook."
yeah. Yeah, his first words. So, I'm Wade. Hi, I'm Wade. It's right there in my handwriting. I hit a wall. That's it. I was exhausted. And I had to stop writing so much, and I had to take restock, and take evaluation. Things weren't happening internally from a company standpoint, that I was happy about. Opportunities that I was told were going to probably be happening were not happening. There was a lot of internal fighting going on at Marvel, which was the antithesis of what it had been like a few years earlier, where everything was positive forward momentum. The minute scumbag Ron Perlman bought the company and elevated it to a stock driven sort of an enterprise, they were milking the company dry. They were exhausting us to generate more and more revenue on a quarterly basis, and we were doing it for them like idiots, because it was making us a lot of money, and it was getting us a lot of attention. But
Right.
ultimately all they were doing was looking to destroy the company. They were looking to suck as much money out of it up as they could in order to break it apart, which is exactly what happened a couple of years later when they declared their fake bankruptcy. The company was still making $350 million in publishing revenue, but the company declares bankruptcy because it has almost $1 billion in leveraged debt placed upon its shoulders. So it was just bullshit. It was all bullshit. And I saw the bullshit happening, and I didn't want to be a part of it anymore. I just wanted a break. And yes, my first kid came in 94. So on top of all of that, I just wanted a break. So late 95 through mid 96 really became a head break, where I just did a tremendous amount of less work, and I started to just reevaluate what I wanted to do. And that's when I'd been given a job offer at Valiant to claim, and
Yeah.
I turned it down at first because it wasn't exactly the job title that it needed to be. And he kept coming back to me, Steve Masarski, and eventually we landed at a place where it was interesting enough for me to do, and this was different. I didn't want to be a full-time freelance writer. I really didn't. My goal at that time in my life, in my early 30s, was to run a company. So they gave me an opportunity to run a company. Stupid
And
me! What an idiot I was!
you said yes, and you
Because
and you
running a
still
company
wrote
is
books,
freaking exhausting. It's
and you
exhausting work.
and the
Um,
crazy part is you still wrote comics because you were
yeah, I still
writing
wrote
comics
comics when I
for
was. Yeah,
yeah.
I was editor in chief, and then less than a year later, Steve left the company, and so I was president and publisher of the company, and I'm the one who closed the company down. went to the parent company and said, no more lying about the budget, no more bullshit. This is the truth of our numbers, and we closed up the office in New York, and I left soon after that too. So that was like, yeah, 90.
Okay,
92 to 98 was not all unicorns and rose petals. It was really exciting and very, very lucrative financially, but from a stress level standpoint, you notice I used to have hair.
You have told me that. Yeah,
it fell out. It all fell out in just a few years, and a lot of that was just stress.
So this is funny. To clarify, he's not talking about Ron Perlman.
I tell Aaron I'm not even gonna deign his response with a response. I'm not even gonna bother. There's Ron Perlman, the actor, and there's Ron Perlman, the scumbag billionaire.
That is written
different spellings to their last name.
On their business card. That's exactly how it's written.
It should be written scumbag billionaire. Omar, you want to know how bad it got and what I think of this man 25 years later?
Damn right I do. Go ahead.
This is how bad it is. I refuse to watch anything that Ellen Barkin, the actress, is in ever again, because she was married to him at that time. Okay? So she's walking around with diamonds that are born off the backs of employees that are being laid off by the company. Okay, friends who are being laid off by the company. My brother was laid off by the company, and she's walking around in items that were purchased through the largesse of her wonderful husband, who she ended up divorcing bitterly a few years later, and walked away with a bunch of money. A bunch of that money was Marvel's money, let me tell you. So she's tainted by association. Just that she allowed that man to bed her down means that I refuse to watch anything she's in. And I liked her as an actress too, way back when. So it's been over 25 years since I've watched a single thing she's been in.
I love that you kept it classy. That's awesome. Good for you.
I was going to go much more vulgar, and I decided not to.
Here's a good question, and we kind of answered that because he's working on X-Men Legends. But are you doing any creator-owned stuff? Because this is Simeon Logic. He's asking, what are you working on these days that you're really interested in?
Well, Simeon Logic, all you have to do is Google Fabian Nicieza, and you'll see what I'm working on these days. I've been doing a digital comic for Webtoon with Riley Brown, artist that I worked with on Cable and Deadpool. It's called Outrage. It is free to read, so read it. We're working on our second season now. It's first season was 26 chapters, and the second season's 30 chapters. Each chapter is about the equivalent of 5 to 6 pages of a comic book art, but it's vertical scroll, so you're looking at it a panel at a time.
What's the app?
What
was the app that's
Webtoon? Webtoon is the largest digital comic publisher on the planet. They have thousands of comics. It's like the Netflix of comics. It's a Korean-based company, and they got a lot of great stuff on their site. Predominantly aimed at teenage Asian girls, by the way. So I got a whole new readership of teenage Asian girls checking out.
Yes.
But it is what I call creator shared. Riley and I own 80% of Outrage, but because Webtoon is paying us to do the chapters so that the creative team can get paid, they get a 20% stake in the property. But Riley and I control the property. So it's not quite an Image deal, but it's still very beneficial to creators. And they have different deals for different people, so I can't speak to anyone else's. Mine's a good deal just because of where we were coming from.
Awesome. This is an awesome question. How much to buy those handwritten spiral notes? They deserve to be archived.
I'm waiting for Deadpool to get more popular again. Maybe if Marvel ever does a Deadpool movie and Ryan's still doing it, maybe I'm going to auction it off. Maybe I'll go to Sotheby's or something and one of those companies and auction it off. I don't know yet. I'm going to sell it eventually just because I've been getting rid of clutter in my life little by little, and as heartwarmingly, nostalgically, collectively driven that notebook might be, it's still actually clutter in the house. So I'll get rid of it eventually.
You got any New Warriors Like maybe issues 1 through like 12, which is
No, it's all sporadic in all different notebooks. You got to
oh,
understand.
I'll
I
take a
was
few
juggling.
pages.
I was juggling 3, 4 notebooks at a time, and I'm doing all the different work, so I never kept track. I might leave a notebook in the office by accident, so I grabbed another notebook at home, etc. So it was all kind of sloppy, and it's all mixes though, because within the notebook that has New Mutants '98 in it, it's also got a whole bunch of other stuff too. Like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
It's really a microcosm of whatever it was I was working on at the time. So you'll get Alpha Flight, and you'll get New Warriors, and you'll get New Mutants at the same time. And then in another
Gotcha.
notebook, you'll get New Warriors, New Mutants, and Marvel Comics Presents.
I was gonna
So
say to have
I quit Alpha Flight, so I wasn't doing that anymore. And then I got a laptop. Whenever we got laptops, I don't even remember when that was. Whenever I got my first laptop is when I stopped the notebook thing.
this is to on your comment earlier. That's some Spanish vendetta right there. You're dead to me. You and your family. Así somos los Latinos.
Yeah, maybe it's in the blood. I really don't know. I just I don't even make a giant show of it. It's just like, oh, she's in something. Oh, fuck her. So that's it's just as simple as that.
Yes, please smash that like button, people. Smash that like button. Um,
So
so
wait, what else am I working on? So Outrage. I've been doing some more stuff for Marvel the last year because they've asked. If it interests me, I do it. If it doesn't interest me, I don't do it. But I guess this week I'm back in their good graces because they've asked me to do a couple things. We're talking about a couple things for next year as well, but we haven't progressed too far with it
oh,
yet.
oh, okay.
Because, like I mentioned earlier in the broadcast, my main focus right now for me, my life, my career is the novels that I'm writing. I sold my first novel at the end of 2019 to Penguin Putnam Publishing. It is a sarcastic suburban mystery. The title of the book is Suburban Dicks. Can I share screen, Omar?
You sure can. Think I have to give you permission when that pops up. You let me know when you do it, and
I'm doing it now. Share screen. What am I trying to share? I gotta
you got to pick a screen.
pick a screen.
Look, I will be your personal IT guy. I just need a couple of those spiral.
Application window.
If that's what you're trying to share, is it in an application?
No, I'm going to do entire screen, and then I'm going to click on it and see if it pops up.
Let me know, and then I should have a pop-up saying that.
Are you seeing it? Yeah, there it is. Isn't it popping up or no?
Not yet. I don't see anything.
Trying to share the cover.
I'd like to see it.
I'm going to cancel and try again. Hold on.
Sure.
Share screen. So what should I do? Share screen is easiest with 2 monitors. I'm sorry, I don't have 2 monitors. Screen sharing works best on a good computer. I'm sorry, I don't have a good computer. Don't show these tips
Still have that
around.
Marvel
Share
laptop
screen.
that they gave you. Yeah, go to share screen, and then you highlight the screen that you want to share, and then at the bottom right-hand side it says share, and that's how you do it. There it is.
That's not right.
Well, that's the screen, but let me.
Holy crap! What's going
yeah.
on? Never mind.
No, go
Forget
ahead.
it.
Get to the part that you need. Get to the picture that you want to share, and I'll add it to the stream once it pops up.
I have it up. I have it up on my desktop.
Oh, it's on the left-hand side, right?
Yeah, right there. I'm moving it.
Move it to the middle.
Right there?
Yeah, and just leave it there.
Okay. It says I'm sharing. Okay.
There you go.
See it?
Yes.
So that's the cover. That's the cover of the book. Book comes out in June of 2021. I am working on the second novel now, which will come out in 2023 because I'm hiding it now. Stop shit.
I got you.
Okay, because it was a 2-book deal. Talk about exciting. So as exciting as New Warriors was for me 30 years ago, this was super exciting because I started working on a book for myself. I just wanted to finish one.
Love hearing that.
I never finished anything I started. I never liked what I wrote in prose. I always was really, really judgmental and critical of it, mostly because it really sucked. So I just at the end of 2017, I just started writing, and the book is an idea, a story, characters, beginning, middle, end, and title that I've had since around 1993, 1994. And I finally started to do it because I knew it was a good story. I just needed to be good enough to be able to tell it, and I hadn't been. And I showed the first few chapters to a couple people, including Alex Segura, who's the president of Archie Comics, who has also written mystery novels. He's written a series of 5 books, Pete Fernandez mystery novels, and he just recently wrote a Star Wars novel, a Poe Dameron novel. So Alex read the first 3 chapters. He said, "Keep going. That's it. That's all I needed to hear. Keep going." And I was like, "Okay." So I just kept going, and I finished it. And I hired a professional editor to read it and give me feedback, advice on where it's working, where it's not, and what I got to do to trim it down. My manuscript was like 540 pages, and I cut and I cut and I cut and I cut. And in summer of 2019, I got an agent who really liked the story idea. I'd met the agent through other business, and he was familiar with the story idea and liked it a lot. And he read the novel and he said, "I love this. I want to represent it, but you got to cut more." And I was like, "Oh crap! I just cut. I had cut like 90 pages. I had to cut more. I had to get it down from 450 to about 400." And we went out with the manuscript in November of 2019, and 5 publishers wanted to buy it. And
Dude, that's
2 publishers really kept wanting to buy it. So the book sold at auction, which was multiple publishers bidding on it. And by the time it was 2 left, each of them had to increase their offer, not necessarily monetarily, but they increased the offer to include a second book, which is an increase monetarily because it makes the contract larger, but it's now for 2 books instead of 1.
you just had it with all those extra pages you got rid of.
No,
Practically.
no. You know what? The extra pages I got rid of was crap, man. It was just bad writing. I learned a lot that first book. I'm not making the same mistakes in the second book.
I love hearing that you are still writing and you're writing novels now. That is freaking awesome. 2021, you said. What was
Is
the month?
June of 2021, coming from Penguin Putnam Publishing. It is
Okay.
called Suburban Dicks. You can actually pre-order it now on the Penguin Putnam site. I put out the link already on Twitter. I really recommend anyone listening, if you're interested, follow me on Twitter. Besides getting really arrogant political tweets, you will also get promotional tweets as well. And in the promotional tweets, I'll do things like link to my new chapter of Outrage that's up online, or promote interior art that Brett Booth is doing on X-Men Legends. I also posted the link for being able to pre-order my book, and I'm gonna post that link at every hour. I've been told would be really obnoxious. So I'll post it once a week, the link to be able to pre-order the book.
I like that you had to be told that was.
I did have to be told that posting that link every hour might come across as really like cheap and whorish.
Look, my wife says we should pre-order and do a review.
I appreciate that, Melanie. Thank you very much. I wish you would. The book has also officially been optioned for television development, but I can't say with who or when, because
look at you, Bill.
Yeah, the way these things work, it's an option window, so they get like 3 years to decide if they're going to do it, et cetera, et cetera. So
yeah,
the production companies that wanted to do this are looking at hiring a showrunner now, and a pilot writer now. So it's pretty cool. It's been pretty exciting. I'm going to turn 59 in a couple of weeks. If this is my 60s, I'd be super happy to close out my career getting to write a book every year and a half.
I'm happy for you.
I appreciate it.
I can tell you right now, my review of the book is it's really good, but not as good as New Warriors. I mean,
I appreciate that.
Who are we kidding?
The book had one working rule to it, though. No fights, no tights, no flights. So it's not superhero stuff. It's not action adventure. It is literally a sarcastic suburban mystery. It is 2 people trying to solve a crime in a suburban New Jersey town, and each of them have a little bit of piquant arrogance about them. So there's a lot of humor to the narrative tone, but it's an unfolding murder mystery, and a 34-year-old should have been an FBI profiler, but she's currently pregnant with her 5th child, working with a reporter who won a Pulitzer Prize while he was in college, and now before his 30th birthday, he's working for a weekly newspaper. So you realize how he fell down in his 20s. And they're the two main characters who are pursuing the solving of a murder mystery in a small suburban New Jersey town.
That's awesome. We have a super chat from Ryan. He says he is enjoying your Juggernaut series. I feel that you're trying to either mock or tell a message about social media in our current society. Are you? Question mark.
No, not really. Not mock. I wanted to introduce a young character. I wanted to have like an Arya Hound relationship between them from Game of Thrones, and I thought, what is a 14-year-old teenage girl who lives on the streets of New York and has superpowers? What's she gonna do? She's gonna and also someone who has a depth of feeling and cares about society in a way that she never wants you to know. And you'll see a little more. You'll issue 5 reveals the truth about her, and I think once you see the truth about her, you'll understand why she puts on the facade of being a pain in the ass the way she does. So I wanted D-Cell to just be a little bit reflective of what someone at age 14 who's getting superpowers would be like now. And that's someone I think who would be streaming constantly and posting everything they do, all the gags they do on TikTok and on YouTube and all of that stuff. So it wasn't so much a commentary, more so as just like an expectation that that's what a teenager would do.
Gotcha. Somebody, Phil Owens was asking if you mind if he screenshot the cover and shared it, and then Simeon Logic says it's on the Penguins.
Yeah,
website.
it's on Penguin's site. The cover's up already. It's also on my Twitter feed. I put the cover up on my Twitter feed. Asking me to share a screen again is
let's not do that. As your IT guy, I recommend against that.
Yeah, my IT consultant recommends we don't try to do that again.
Let's not do that again. We'll kill the band. Fabian, is there a character from DC, and I think I may know the answer. Well, I don't know. From DC that you'd like to write about?
Well, I've written so many of them because I got to work on the Bat family of titles. I got to work on Justice League related stuff. I got to work on Superman related stuff, and I got to work on Trinity. So I've gotten to write them all. I just haven't gotten to write them regularly. If Marie were to call me tomorrow and say, we want you to write a monthly Nightwing book, I'd say yes in a second.
Yes.
If she asked me, do I want to write a monthly Tim Drake book, I probably would say yes in a second. The other characters that I've always wanted to write were Hawkman, but he's been really well done the last couple of years by Robert Benedetti and Brian Hitch. So now I don't want to write Hawkman because I don't want to compare negatively to what they did. I always would have loved to have written a Superman run, but I don't know that I would now because I think there's a little too much baggage on the character right now. Too much continuity baggage has been placed on his shoulders, and I don't know that I'd want to write him that way. I don't know that I want to write him with a kid and married and his secret ID outed and all of that stuff. I don't think I'd want that. So there's characters I love that it's not feasible for me to write. But I grew up reading Marvel and DC. My first contact in this country when I immigrated into America was the Batman TV show and the Superman TV show. The first comics my brother and I bought in the United States were Batman and Superman comics. So the characters mean a tremendous amount to me. But you have to understand I'm past the age and position in my career where I pitch. I don't pitch anymore. You're interested in me doing something, call me, and I do or I don't do it. And then I do it or don't do it to a level of excellent mediocrity that we've come to expect from me. But what I don't do is propose stuff to the majors. I don't pitch them. So
before we ask this question, you have not turned down a New Warriors title, have you? Like no one in the last tweet they approached you, right?
I think that they have a list of 1,642 writers they need to contact first to reboot New Warriors before they think of asking me. And I got to be honest with you. In the late 90s, an editor at Marvel actually got me to start thinking about it. When I left Acclaim, right after I accepted the Gambit assignment, I left Acclaim on a Friday, and on Monday, Mark Powers called me up from Marvel and offered me Gambit monthly. And I said,
solid freaking comic too.
Thank you. So I shrugged my shoulders. I go, okay, I guess. Why not? I had nothing else. I literally left the claim with no work on the table, no idea what I was going to do next. And then Mark offered me Gambit, and I guess I was a freelance writer now. So an editor at Marvel at that time, Glenn Greenberg, called me and said he wanted to reboot New Warriors. Would I please do it? And he was going to be the editor, and I knew he loved the book, so I knew that he'd be somebody I could trust. And we started talking about it, and less than a few weeks after that, he found out that there was already a reboot going on, and that was the one that Jay did, Jay Faerber did. So he called me up and goes, I can't believe that Bobby Chase is doing a relaunch, and I can't believe she's doing it because she doesn't get the book, and blah blah blah. And he was all pissed off, and I was like, whatever, I would not do it now. I really don't think I would do it now. I just did a one pager, and even doing that took Dan Slott talking me into doing it because I didn't want to do it. I think that it'd be a mistake to ask a 60-year-old man to be writing a book about 20-year-old characters. I just think it's kind of dumb. I think that they should explore new voices telling stories of these characters. None of them will ever be as good as me. We know that. We understand that. But
well said.
But they need to be given the chance to fail. How are they ever going to get better if they're not given the chance to fail in comparison to me?
Dude, they have tried 4 times, and we have a 5th one on the way that I don't know where it is. Thank you so much, Lionheart, for this amazing super chat. Fabian, thank you for taking time out of your day to talk with Omar. Parentheses, he's great. I think he's talking about you, not me. Do you have any advice for someone who wants to start their own comic book series? I have characters and ideas already flushed out. Yeah. Do you have any advice for anybody that wants to get into writing comics?
Yeah, if you want to write comics but you don't draw them, then find someone who draws them and work with them to develop comics. Period. That's it. It's as simple as that. You live in an age right now where with a click of a button, you could disseminate your content to hundreds or thousands of people to read it. Okay? You start small, you don't start big. The biggest mistake a lot of young writers or incoming wannabe professionals make is that they lead with their 5,000 page magnum opus. Okay, no one wants to read the 5,000 page magnum opus by a newcomer. They want to read a 4 to 8 page story that shows you can tell a beginning, middle, and end to your story, that you know how to dialogue, that you know how to caption, that you know how to create character and mood and tone. So, and no artist who's also looking to break in has the ability and time to commit to drawing your 5,000 page magnum opus with no money coming in. Okay. The second thing, and this flows into that point, that writers need to realize is that what it takes you 1 minute to write could take an artist an entire day to draw. Okay. So what takes you a day to write could take an artist an entire week to draw, or 2 weeks. So writers way too often don't understand the sheer physical toll that it takes to be an artist. Okay. And quite frankly, I find writers to be absolute idiots about this sort of thing. Okay. They're clueless about the reality of drawing a comic book because they don't do it themselves, or when they have done it themselves, it's just been for fun and it hasn't been under any semblance of pressure or deadlines, right? So don't lead with a huge story. Write 4-page stories, write 8-page stories, create an anthology of small stories. That makes it easier for other people to read so that you can get feedback. It makes it easier to present to someone if you're hoping to get professional work by showing it to an editor at a company, because you're not asking as much of them. Okay, it's a lot easier to read an 8-page story than it is to read a 22-page story. It's a lot easier to read a 22-page story than it is to read an 80-page story. It's just less time consuming. And when you're trying to get people to look at your work, you are asking of their time. All right, so you have to take that into account. It's not all about you. That's the other thing that I'm going to say to writers. It dovetails with the point I made about artists. Writers live in their own brain so much that they think reality exists in their own brain, and it doesn't. The reality exists outside of you. beyond you. People have jobs. People have things they want to do. People don't have the time to devote it solely to the story that's been in your brain for 10 years because they don't give a shit. Why should they? Why
Right.
should they? Why should they give a shit about the story that's been in your brain for 10 years? That's yours. That's not theirs. So be aware of that. It's not all about you. All right. So I learned that a long, long time ago. The first time I tried writing stuff and having my friends read it when I was about 14 years old. And one of them goes, I don't feel like reading this. And I was like, what? You don't feel like reading it, but I wrote it.
I wrote it. I'm funny.
And I learned that I learned that when I was 14 years old. I got to tell you, I've met professionals who are in their 40s who still haven't figured that out. It ain't all about you. So keep it simple, keep it lean. Work with an artist. If you're drawing yourself, then just do it yourself. Okay. Create a PDF file, scan the pages, create a PDF file, and disseminate it to 25 friends and get their feedback. And from those 25, disseminate it to another 50. And from those 50, disseminate it to another 100. All of a sudden, if you're doing it slowly and smartly, you have 1,000 people reading your material, giving you feedback. And you have to get feedback. You have to know what's working or not working. Because if there's a difference between being a writer and being a professional writer. A professional writer has to write it for pay and for people to play. Okay, a writer is just writing it for themselves, and that's fine too. There's nothing wrong with that. But you got to decide what kind of writer you want to be. Somebody who wants to be a professional writer has to be prepared to have people read their work and tell you suck. Okay, you have to be ready for that. I have had people wait in line for 2 hours to tell me that I suck. And I respect the living hell out of that person because my work made them hate me so much that they were willing to wait 2 hours in line to tell me that they hate me.
That's awesome.
Yeah, San Diego, like 1993. Somebody waited 2 hours in line, didn't even have a comic to sign, just waited 2 hours in line, came up to me and says, I just wanted to tell you I think you suck. And I go, that's it? I go, how long did you wait? He goes, almost 2 hours. I go, was it worth it? He goes, yeah. I go, have a good day. That's it.
You didn't even ask why or what?
Yeah, my attitude was, well, besides which it was still a long line, so we had to keep signing. My
Right.
attitude is, if you think I suck, then chances are pretty good you bought the work and read the work. Otherwise, how can you think I suck, right? So if you bought the work and you read the work, guess what? Your opinion is valid for whatever you want it to be because I already cashed the check. I was already paid for the work, and if you bought it, you've already actually paid me. Because back then we were making royalties on sales of our books. So if you bought the comic, you were actually giving me a percentage of a penny every time you bought it. So guess what? You're paying me to hate me. That's fine with me. That's okay. It's no big deal. I got an incredibly thick skin when it comes to that kind of stuff because I just shrug my shoulders. I'm too busy working on the next thing to worry about, someone not liking the last thing,
That is true. You always got to keep moving forward. You should. Man, that was some really solid advice, Fabian. And somebody pointed out, hold on just a second, right here. I feel like this is rock solid advice that applies to just about everything in life, not just writing pearls of wisdom. And that's true. The
Thank
advice
you.
you gave Lionheart was amazing, man. Like that.
I'm an old man. I'm an old man who's been doing this for a very, very long time. And I've failed and I've succeeded. And I've had a career that has let me work in lots of different fields, write for lots of different platforms. So I got a lot of experience. Someone's asking, do I do a master class? I actually did like 5 classes already with Hero Initiative, and then I did one with Talent Talk. I'm not doing it right now because I got work on my plate that I got to take care of. And I may get back to doing some again in 2021. The thing is, I don't. I'm fine talking about it. I don't like teaching it that much because I feel like I'm still busy doing it, if that makes sense. So it's hard for me to juggle the amount of effort and work it takes to teach you, because then I feel a responsibility toward you as a student, quote unquote, when I'd rather be feeling responsibility for me as a writer. And because I've done very little teaching and very little classwork of this nature, I still am not 100% sure how I can juggle that and reconcile that. So I took a pause from my classes. I did I did like 5 Hero Initiative things last year. The proceeds all went to Hero Initiative, and then I did one Talent Talk live one. But I haven't. I told the guys doing it, I need a break. I need to rethink this and see what I'm going to do next year, if I'm going to do it at all. Just because I got to figure out how to reconcile the teaching from the doing. So maybe I will, but there's a lot of guys doing some great classes right now, especially because of this pandemic. You can go on Talent Talk Live and you can see some really good people like Howard Chaykin and Mark Wade doing classes. They're fantastic. The Hero Initiative one, I think they still archive theirs, and you can donate to Hero Initiative, which is a fantastic organization that helps comic book creators who are struggling. And you can probably they may have their stuff for archive that you can donate to and get to see them. I don't know, but I've done a bunch. I just don't know yet what I'll be doing next year. But thank you, though. I appreciate it.
Writing a freaking trilogy of books next, and then you're gonna get people to come and pitching stories to you. Hey man, you remember Red Robin? We're gonna start a Red Robin Legends, and then you're gonna get
Red Robin Legends. Me and Chuck Dixon writing Red Robin Legends. Woohoo!
That's right, man.
I'm in the point right now where I want to write a book a year if I can. I'm at the point right now where if the TV show happens, I want to be in the writer's room, learning and listening, because I want to write. I would love to write for television, but all of it, you got to understand, at my age and at my point right now, all of it is stuff to do that sounds like fun, stuff to do that's different, stuff to do that's new. I have less interest in writing comics because I've been doing it for 30 years and I've written 1,000 comics. I want to do different and new things every time I get a chance to. As dumb as it sounds, one of the reasons I did so much custom comic work for Marvel and DC in the last few years is because every one of them was a ridiculously difficult challenge. From a page count story to a pleasing your client, context, they were challenges, and I'm always interested in something that's challenging to me, because writing an issue of Juggernaut, as much fun as it is, and it was a lot of fun, it's not new. It's not it's not unexpected. It's a character I know. It's a character I understand. The format, the pacing, the structure, all of that is stuff that I've done already, so I get it. So it's not that hard for me to do that. It's a hell of a lot harder for me to write an 8-page story for a pharmaceutical company. So that that's why I'm always trying to explore different things.
I completely understand and respect that. I think it's wonderful that you're, because you see a lot of writers, and I'm not going to say any names, but there's several writers that have moved on. They're like, yeah, I make more money doing television shows than I do making silly comic books. Why would I go back to do comic books? Or, you see, and then you see writers pitch stories for comics that eventually will get picked up for TV shows or movies, and that's the route they want to go. And some of them just seem to be in it for the paycheck. But I like the idea of you actually being in the writer's room and wanting to learn and do a screenwriting for television. I think that's awesome, man. Not a lot of
and look,
people are like, you get a paycheck, whatever. I did my thing. I wrote the book, and I get a paycheck now because my characters are on television.
Yeah, but the thing is, that's even a semblance of control too, and giving up a semblance of control. Right. Because when I'm optioning the book, I own the book, I own the copyright. It's no different than an Image comic. I could easily have said one of the contingencies of the deal is that I write the pilot, and that was actually discussed. And I said, no, I don't want to write the pilot because I know I could write to that format. I have written to that format before. I don't want to give them a reason to say no. If I'm writing the pilot, all I'm actually doing is giving them a reason to say no. I would rather write episode 7. You know what I mean? I would rather write episode 7 because I've been in the writer's room and I'm given the opportunity to write episode 7, and I understand how the showrunner thinks and how the showrunner is working. I understand how they've broken down the book into half-hour chunks or whatever. So to me, it made more sense because I am doing it kind of for fun and as a long game. I'm not doing it because it's my career now. I'm at the age where I don't even really need a career now. You know what I mean? I was, until I sold the book, I was actually closer to thinking about retirement than I was to thinking about working. And the thing about being a writer is you never technically retire, but with my kids, my second kid finished college this year. So there goes tuition, no more tuition checks. You know what I mean? No more
Yeah.
mortgage checks. So your life changes. The way you have to think about things should change too. So if I don't have an obligation that I have to earn X amount of dollars a year, then I don't want to be doing things because I need to earn X amount of dollars a year. I want to be doing things because I want to try this, or I want to write that, or I want to, all of that stuff. So, I'm finishing my second book, and all I'm thinking about is, crap, will they offer me a contract for a third book? I hope they do. And then I'm also thinking, well, screw it. If they don't, I could just write my third book and sell it to someone else. You know what I mean? Or I could just write my third book and sell it myself if it comes down to it.
I love your outlook towards life, man. I think it's freaking awesome. And let's see. We'll take one more question because we got to start wrapping up.
Yeah, we got to wrap up soon because I got to go to the bathroom soon.
Okay. Who's better to work for and write for, Marvel or DC?
Neither. It doesn't make a difference. It really doesn't. They're not. They did have different corporate philosophies at one time. When I broke in, DC was always far more corporate and far more buttoned down than Marvel was. At a young age, I would have been much happier writing for Marvel than DC because I was a lot less buttoned down and formal when I was that age. Now it always boils down to the editorial sensibilities of whatever editor it is you're working for. So I could be hired by an editor at DC who I'm very simpatico with and work well with, and that's no different than being hired by an editor at Marvel that I'm very simpatico with and can work with. Vice versa, you can be hired by an editor that you don't work well with and turns out to be a jerk or uncommunicative, et cetera, et cetera. That could happen at either company right now. I don't know that there's a Disney sensibility bleeding down into Marvel any more than there is a AT&T sensibility bleeding down into DC. That's a fan perception. It's not an actual reality of the people working in the offices. Marvel became a very different place the minute Ike Perlmutter took over as the president of the company, because he has a very different personality than the people who ran the company before him, and he's a very difficult person to work with that has very rigid belief systems and parameters for how he wants an office environment to exist. So the Marvel of 2020 is nothing like the Marvel of 1989. And I mean, nothing like it. I don't go to the offices anymore, mostly because I don't want to walk through the halls because it's not the way I see Marvel. And yet it's a completely fully functioning company that produces X amount of books a year and has really talented people working both in the office and on a freelance level. It's just that the tone and sensibilities of the companies are completely different than they were. That's not because it says Marvel on it, because clearly my Marvel is very different than this Marvel, and they both say Marvel and they both produce comic books. It's about the tone that gets set in place by the ownership or the CEO running the
company. Okay. And to wrap up the interview today, can we answer this at the same time, please? If someone were to choose one of your comics to read, which would you suggest?
Wow, that's tough.
Come on, did you know the answer, Fabian?
No, I don't.
New Warriors and Cable and Deadpool.
Oh my God! But I thought he meant one comic. No, I didn't think he meant one title. I thought he meant one comic.
One comic, man.
That's why one of my comics.
X-Men 30.
What?
Dude, X-Men 30 was solid.
Oh, the wedding issue?
Yeah, the wedding issue.
Ugh, so wordy, so verbose.
That's why I liked it.
I think Cable and Deadpool number 8 might be really good.
I love that you went with Cable and Deadpool.
I also, you know what though? Now, New Warrior. I was going to say New Warriors number 18, but it's predicated on things that happened before. So it opens up in a way that if you haven't been reading the book every month, you wouldn't be as shocked as people were when they read that issue, who'd been reading the book every month. Troublemakers #1. There you go. Troublemakers #1.
The book you had no fun writing.
Clean. I did have a lot of fun writing it. It's just I was running a freaking company that was failing miserably at the time. So there's a difference between having fun writing it and thinking about it as having had fun. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get it. You didn't write. Did you write for Alf?
No, I edited Alf for like 4 issues, and I wasn't even the editor. Evan Skolnick was running everything. I inherited a line of titles when I became an editor at Marvel. It was called Marvel Star Line, and
the kids.
A few of the books were already on their way to being canceled, so I didn't pay any attention to them. So like the last 3-4 issues of Alf, I wasn't involved in it. That was Evan working with the guys who'd been working on the book every month from there. My job was to focus on the new Barbie comics we were going to be doing, the Ren and Stimpy comic we were going to be doing, Mighty Mouse. So I focused more on that, not the stuff that was already in the pipeline that was nearing completion, Alf being one of those things.
I can't believe these bastards brought up Alf.
They're bringing up Alf. They're bringing up Alf because there's the Alf fucking the seal cover. That's why they're bringing up Alf. And I was technically the editor of that.
You let it fly. You weren't paying attention.
You know what? No, we all saw it. Every single person in the office saw that. I don't think a single person in the office said, "Why is Al fucking a seal?" None of us noticed it until someone outside the company said, "Why is Al fucking a seal?" And the minute they said that, we said, "Holy crap, Alf is fucking a seal." None of us saw it at all. He was just wrestling with a seal, for crying out loud. It's Alf. He doesn't even have a penis. Just a little furry alien. There's no penis there. What's he doing? The seal, on the other hand, looks incredibly disturbed about whatever it is Alf is doing.
It was not consent. I can tell.
What number of Alf was that? Issue 47 or 46? 48 was it? 48.
Have you ever had to sign that for anybody?
Oh yeah, plenty of times.
Serious? That's awesome.
Yeah. And it's like, look, now it's 30 years later, so let Alf and Seal have a good time.
So Alf has become an ongoing joke here because everybody has joked about wanting an Alf omnibus, and this is the kind of stuff.
There it is. Thank you. None of us thought that was fornication going on.
That is not consensual. What's happening here?
That's the problem. The real problem with the cover is not that Alf is having sex with a seal. It's that clearly the seal does not want to be having sex with Alf. We really should have known that when we saw it, but I guarantee you 100% none of us did.
Ladies and gentlemen, this was 1989 Marvel, the Marvel that Fabian misses, and that's why he can get away with things like that. Not in 2020. Thank you so much, dude.
Thank you very much, Omar. It was a great show. Every time we talk, it's always a lot of fun. I appreciate it. I order you to have me back on after the book comes out, though. Okay.
I promise I will. My wife and I will have you on. We can talk about your book. I'm happy to always plug your work. You're one of my top favorite writers, stand-up guy, and always tell it like it is. Thank you, everybody, so much for joining us.
Thank you, everybody. There's a tremendous amount of people on the chat. I appreciate it. I'm sorry I couldn't get to all your questions, though. Everybody have a good day. Okay.
Everybody,
I gotta go potty.